Imagine waking up tomorrow and everything is gone. No money, no phone, no job, no house, no possessions that matter in the modern world. Now think carefully about this. Would you still be considered rich? Most people assume wealth started with money. That assumption is wrong. For most of human history, money did not exist. But wealth absolutely did. So the real question is not whether ancient humans had wealth. The real question is, what exactly did they measure instead? And why does your brain still care about it today? Modern humans think wealth is ownership. Money, property, assets, numbers in an account. But for most of history, none of that existed. No banks, no salaries, no currencies, no financial systems. Yet there were still rich people, there were still powerful people, and there were still people everyone depended on. So something else was being measured. Something more basic than money. Something closer to survival itself. And once you see it, modern wealth starts to look very different. Let's go back tens of thousands of years. Small groups of humans moving across land constantly. No storage, no buildings, no long-term possessions. Everything had to be carried. Which means something important. Accumulation was not wealth. It was a burden. So wealth had to exist in another form. Not objects, but capability. A skilled hunter wasn't just useful. He increased the group's survival probability. A person who could find water in drought conditions wasn't just helpful. They were essential. A person who understood animal behavior wasn't just intelligent. They were life-saving. But even that wasn't the highest form of wealth. Because skill alone is fragile. If nobody trusts you, your skill doesn't matter for long. And that changes everything. In small groups, survival was collective. Nobody survives alone. So something invisible became valuable. Trust. If people trusted you, you had access to food even when you didn't hunt. If people trusted you, you had protection when you were weak. If people trusted you, you had allies during conflict. This is the key shift most people miss. Wealth was not ownership. Wealth was access. And access depended on reputation. You didn't need to own food. You needed to be allowed to share it. You didn't need resources. You needed relationships. And relationships became the original economy. Here is something counterintuitive. In many ancient societies, the richest individuals were not hoarders. They were the most generous. That sounds backwards until you understand the system. Food spoils. Storage is limited. And survival is uncertain. So keeping everything for yourself is risky. But giving food away creates something powerful. Obligation. When you give, you build future access. You create social debt. And social debt is more valuable than stored goods. Because stored goods can be lost. But relationships persist. So generosity was not weakness. It was investment. A long-term survival strategy disguised as sharing. Then something happens that changes human history completely. Humans stop moving constantly. They settle. Agriculture begins. Now survival can be stored. Food can be saved. Land can be controlled. For the first time, accumulation becomes possible. And wealth becomes visible. Now you can see who has more. Who controls land? Who controls production? Who controls stability? But we are still not in the money system yet. We are in a control system. And control becomes the new form of wealth. In agricultural societies, wealth becomes rooted in land. Land produces food. Food produces survival. Survival produces power. Now the richest person is not the best hunter. It is the person who controls the most productive land.
controls the labor working that land, or controls the distribution of food. Wealth becomes slower, heavier, more permanent. And for the first time in human history, wealth becomes inheritable. You can be born into advantage. But even here, something else still matters in the background. Something older than land. Across many ancient societies, wealth often took a different form. It walked. Cattle, sheep, goats. These were not just animals. They were moving stores of value. They reproduced. They grew. They could be traded. They could be moved across land. In many cultures, livestock functions as currency itself. Marriage exchanges, political agreements, trade systems, all built on living wealth. This form of wealth is important because it connects ancient survival directly to modern economics. Because it shows a pattern. Wealth is always something that grows access to future survival, not just something you possess. Then cities emerge, and wealth shifts again. Now it is not just about land or animals. It is about systems. Food distribution systems, trade systems, security systems, infrastructure systems. Now the most powerful people are those who control flows. Who gets food? Who gets protection? Who gets access? At this point, wealth becomes abstract. It is no longer just physical. It becomes organizational. And whoever controls organization controls survival at scale. Across all stages of human history, one pattern stays consistent. Hunter-gatherers, farmers, pastoral societies, early cities. Wealth always meant the same underlying thing: control over survival and access to others. Sometimes that was knowledge, sometimes land, sometimes animals, sometimes political power, but never just accumulation for its own sake. Wealth was always functional, always relational, always tied to survival, and that pattern never disappeared. Now here is the part most people miss. Your brain did not evolve in a financial system. It evolved in a social survival system. That is why status still feels important. Reputation still shapes opportunity. Social approval still affects decisions. Even when money exists. Because money is new. But the psychology behind wealth is ancient. Your brain still tracks access, trust, and position, not just numbers. And that is why modern wealth still feels emotional, not logical. Because deep down, your brain is still measuring the same thing it always has. Who has access to survival, and who does not?